When the teacher handed her a violin with a smirk in front of the entire class, fully expecting her to falter, what happened next stunned everyone. The room went still, and he couldn't muster a single word. There's something about starting fresh at a new school when you're 14. It feels like your body grew too big for your skin, but your stomach shrank from nerves. Amara Jennings felt it the moment she stepped off the bus in Bakersfield, California, gripping the strap of her backpack like it was the last piece of home she had. Southridge Middle School wasn't impressive. It had that dry, sun-baked vibe that only California schools seem to carry, dust collecting in the corners of weathered brick buildings, the scent of hot pavement lingering in the air. The front office hummed with quiet conversation and the occasional beep of a scanner. No one looked up as she entered. Just another new student. She stood patiently while the secretary printed her schedule. No warm greeting, no small talk. Just a paper slid across the counter and a curt, "Lockers down C Hall." Her mother had given her a simple rule: keep your head down, baby. You're here to learn, not to be liked. Amara planned to follow that to the letter. No drama, no attention. Just good grades, her music, and getting through the year without a scene. But her silence spoke louder than she realized. By the end of lunch, the whispers had already started. Violin girl. Mute chick. The quiet one with the pretty eyes. She caught the names in passing murmurs but didn't react. What mattered was room 117, orchestra class. Her final period. What no one knew was that Amara wasn't just good with a violin, she was extraordinary. But she kept that part of herself buried deep, alongside memories of her grandmother. The bow she carried wasn't just a tool, it was the last gift she ever received from the woman who'd raised her while her mother worked double shifts. When Amara held it, the world steadied. Room 117 buzzed with chatter and strings being tuned when she walked in. The noise made her flinch inward. At the front, the teacher, Mr. Darnell, scribbled on the whiteboard, his light gray blazer hanging awkwardly off his frame. His voice, when he turned to address the class, was laced with a brittle kind of authority. "We've got a new addition," he said, as if he were announcing a furniture delivery instead of introducing a student. "This is Amara Jennings. She'll be with us for the semester." She gave a quiet nod and headed for a seat in the back, setting her case gently on the floor. A few curious glances met her, but most of the class quickly returned to their side conversations. Mr. Darnell didn't ask what she played or anything at all, really. Just scanned the room like he was already over it. Over the next 2 weeks, Amara kept to herself. She played softly during rehearsals, careful not to stand out. But still, people noticed. Her music sheets were neatly marked, her posture flawless, and her bow hand never wavered. A few students started to catch on. This girl wasn't new to this. One afternoon, a girl named Brianna leaned over during warm-ups and said, "You play better than Darnell's favorites, and you're barely trying." Amara gave a small smile, adjusting her rosin without a word. But her quiet confidence seemed to irritate Mr. Darnell. Maybe it was the way she didn't seek approval. Maybe it was how she refused to play the part of a wide-eyed newcomer. Whatever it was, it built day by day. You could sense it. Like he was waiting for a moment to knock her down a peg. And then, finally, that moment came. It all started shifting faster than anyone expected. By her 3rd week at Southridge Middle, Amara knew the school like she'd lived there for years. She memorized which lockers jammed, which teachers didn't mind snacks, and which kids talked too loud just to hide how unsure they were. She moved like a shadow, headphones resting around her neck, sketchpad under one arm, and her violin case, black and worn, always in hand. Near the handle, the faded initials JJ were carved into the leather, faint, but permanent. Mr. Glenn Darnell was cut from a different cloth than most of the staff. He didn't yell. He didn't have to. When he spoke, his voice had weight, just heavy enough to make the room lean in. His tone was sharp, not commanding out of respect, but out of the kind of tension that made students sit straighter just to avoid trouble. He'd been running the orchestra program for more than a decade. Some said he'd once been a real musician, part of a chamber group, maybe even toured. But the way people told it, it sounded more like gossip than praise. Like something he couldn't let go of, even after it let go of him. In his class, favoritism wasn't subtle. Everyone saw it. The same few students always got the solos, the compliments, the nods of approval. Most came from families who donated to the school or showed up to every concert. The rest? Background noise. Filler. Amara knew exactly where she stood. Invisible. And that suited her just fine, until one Monday afternoon. They were practicing a Mozart string ensemble. Mr. Darnell was clearly in a mood. When a cello student forgot their music, he made an example of them, slapped a new copy onto the stand and muttered, "Try not to waste everyone's time." Amara watched from her seat in the corner, quiet as always. Then he paused. His eyes swept across the room. "Stopped. Jennings." Amara looked up, her fingers mid-adjustment on her bow. "You've been quiet," he said. "Too quiet." A few students laughed under their breath. Others went silent. "You've been here nearly a month. I think it's time we hear what you've got." Her chest tightened, not from fear, but something deeper. She hadn't planned a solo. Not today. Not like this. But she rose, steady, and picked up her violin. "Perfect," Darnell said, stepping aside with a dramatic wave of his hand. "Let's see what kind of magic you can conjure." The word magic hung in the air like a challenge, sour and mocking. Amara didn't respond. She placed her violin under her chin, closed her eyes briefly, and drew in a breath. Just as she was about to play, Darnell added, "Don't worry, we won't judge too harshly." The snickers were soft but sharp, the kind that sting more than laughter. Amara opened her eyes. She didn't meet anyone's gaze. She just played. A single note, then another. A slow, aching melody unfolded, one few would recognize. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't loud. It was honest, fluid, alive. Her bow moved like it belonged there, like it had something to say no one else could. The room changed. Darnell didn't. His arms stayed crossed, jaw clenched. You could almost hear the thoughts racing behind his eyes. Where did she learn that? Who does she think she is? But she kept going. Her fingers danced, lifting the room with each measure. The chatter stopped. Even the teacher's pets sat frozen. When she finally lowered her violin, the silence pressed against the walls like breath held too long. She sat down gently, the instrument resting across her lap. Darnell said nothing. A voice from the back whispered, "Damn." Amara sat like it meant nothing. But it did. Everyone felt it. Darnell wasn't done, though. He never was. The next day, something unspoken clung to the room. Not chaos, not noise. Just tension. Like the class had read a chapter from a secret book and were waiting to see how the story played out. Amara entered the same as always. Headphones hanging loose, case in hand, eyes on the floor. But she felt it now. The stares. The whispers. Even students who hadn't noticed her last week were watching. Darnell was already at the board, writing. He didn't glance at her. Amara preferred that. She didn't want praise. She didn't need approval. She just didn't want to be dragged back into the spotlight. But Mr. Darnell didn't leave tension alone for long. Halfway through the period, he turned and clapped his hands. "Let's shake things up," he said. "Today we're trying something different. Solo rotation. No music sheets. Just a few bars each." Groans followed. One kid muttered, "Seriously?" He didn't respond. Just scanned the room. "We'll start from the back." His gaze landed directly on her. "Jennings, let's kick it off." Not a request. An order. She paused. Not out of fear, but clarity. She knew exactly what this was. It wasn't about music. It was about control. About putting her on display. Again. She opened her case slowly, hands moving with the rhythm of years of practice in a noisy apartment where the ceiling fan never stopped humming. She stood. Before she could raise her bow, Darnell chuckled, just loud enough to sting. "Let's hope yesterday wasn't just a fluke." Some of the students laughed. Nervously. Some looked down. Others just stared. Amara didn't react. Didn't speak. She played. And this time, it wasn't a reply. It was a statement. The first note sliced through the air, unapologetic. She chose a passage from Sound Cells. Nothing soft. Nothing safe. It was fast, intricate, fierce. The room went still. Darnell stepped back. She played for maybe half a minute. When she stopped, even the air seemed to pause. Darnell's smile returned, tight and brittle. "Impressive," he said, "for someone who doesn't exactly look like they belong in a conservatory." The room cracked. No one laughed. Even his usual fans looked stunned. One boy in the front blinked at Amara like he was seeing her for the first time. She stared at Darnell, eyes steady, sharp. No tears. No outburst. Just silence. Darnell turned away like nothing had happened. "All right. Jonah, your turn." Jonah didn't move. His hands trembled. From 2 seats away, Brianna whispered, "That was messed up." Amara sat back down, set her violin across her lap. Her fingers still clutched the bow tightly. Her heartbeat didn't race. It thudded loud and steady, like a metronome. That afternoon, she skipped her next class. Instead, she walked straight into the counselor's office. She didn't report him. She didn't mention what happened. She just asked, "Are there any music groups in town? Ones outside school?" The counselor, Miss Diana Bright, tilted her head. "You're the girl who played yesterday, right?" Amara hesitated, then nodded. "You shook up the whole music wing. I had 2 teachers come by asking who you were." Amara looked down. "I just want a place where I can play, and it won't turn into something else." Miss Bright gave her a long look, then pulled a flyer from her drawer. "There's a youth music program downtown. Saturday mornings. They don't care where you're from, just how you play." Amara took the flyer without saying much. But word moves fast in small schools. And this word moved fast enough to make it through the front doors. By Thursday, the whispers had legs. They strolled through the cafeteria, drifted into classrooms that had nothing to do with music. Teachers didn't say anything, but their eyes lingered longer. Less indifferent, more curious, like they were trying to match the rumors with the quiet girl they'd never really seen before. Darnell? He acted like nothing had changed. Same tired jokes, same icy smirks, same brittle pride pretending to be posture. But the class didn't laugh anymore. They watched. They watched him. And they watched her. Friday came too fast. Final period. Orchestra. Amara thought about skipping. She'd even made it halfway to the office. But then she turned around. Not because she was afraid. Because she refused to disappear. It felt like another setup, another opportunity to twist something that mattered to her. But still, Amara walked in, took her usual seat, and waited. Her violin case leaned against her leg. The air in the room was dense with unspoken tension. Even the students who usually joked and slouched were sitting a little straighter, like something was about to happen. Mr. Darnell cleared his throat. "Before we start rehearsal, I'd like to give one of our musicians a chance to show us what she's really made of." He didn't need to say her name. Every head turned toward her. Amara met his eyes. He gave her a nod, as if he were offering her some great privilege. "Jennings, would you mind sharing something of your own? Anything you'd like." The room held still. Amara stood, lifted her violin, and walked to the front. Darnell smiled, tight, insincere. "No pressure. We're all just curious about where you learned to play like that." Amara understood exactly what was happening. This wasn't about music. It was a test. Either she'd buckle under the pressure, or she'd shine and remind everyone just how far above him she really was. She chose not to think about him at all. She closed her eyes and pictured her grandmother's apartment on Union Avenue, the soft hum of the radio, the worn floorboards, the cracked windows. She remembered her tiny fingers pressing strings until they burned, those early mornings spent running scales instead of sleeping in, and every competition where she'd walked in invisible and walked out unforgettable. And then she played. Not something sweet, not something safe. She chose Shostakovich's Violin Concerto No. 1, a piece that didn't forgive mistakes, that demanded command. Either you owned it, or it owned you. Her bow glided with confidence. Her fingers flew. The tempo surged. She didn't look at Darnell, didn't glance at the class, just played. The room responded, not with cheers, not with gasps, but with a stillness so full it felt like time itself was suspended. Even the air was different. When she stopped, she didn't raise her head right away. She exhaled, lowered her instrument, and stood quietly. No one moved. No one spoke. They were still trying to absorb what had just happened. Mr. Darnell opened his mouth like he meant to say something, but nothing came out. Amara turned and returned to her seat. No applause. No comments. Just that thick, wordless silence that said more than anything ever could. Later, in the hallway, a boy from the cello section caught up with her. "That was... I've never heard anything like that," he said, barely above a whisper, like it would be wrong to say it any louder. "Thanks," she said softly. Brianna joined them. His face looked like he bit into a lemon. They both laughed, quietly, not cruelly. Just honest. "You doing the spring concert?" Brianna asked. "I don't know yet." "You should." He can't keep hiding behind sarcasm forever. But Darnell wasn't hiding. He was plotting his next move. The following week began with a strange hush, not the kind that follows awe, but the kind that clings to tension. Something had shifted, and everyone felt it. Amara moved through her day as usual. Head down, backpack on one shoulder, violin never far. But each step felt like it carried more weight. Not fear, not pride. Something else, the heaviness of a moment that the world hadn't caught up to yet. By second period Monday, she was called to the front office. She didn't ask why. Principal Lindley sat behind her desk, fingers interlaced, smile kind but tired. A second person was there, a man in a tailored suit with a tight expression. Assistant Superintendent Langley. He barely glanced at Amara, flipping through a folder. Amara, Principal Lindley began. We received several calls over the weekend. Some were supportive, others concerned. Amara stayed quiet. Mr. Darnell submitted a formal report. He said you disrupted instructional time and acted in a way he felt was deliberately performative and disrespectful. There it was. The system at work. Langley looked up. He claims you undermined his authority. Lindley shifted in her chair. However, 3 students submitted statements praising your performance. And 2 staff members, who weren't even in the class, say they heard about it almost immediately. Amara took a breath. I didn't mean to disrespect anyone. I believe you, Lindley said gently. But I need to ask, did Mr. Darnell say anything inappropriate? Amara paused. She could have answered, could have quoted him word for word. But she didn't. Not because she doubted herself, but because she knew what came next. More meetings, more questions, more of her word against his. The process would become the punishment. I just want to play, she said. Lindley nodded. You'll be allowed to continue in class and perform. But if you ever feel uncomfortable again, come straight here. Langley said nothing. He closed the folder, stood, and left without a glance. In class, something had changed. Mr. Darnell didn't call on her. Didn't say her name. Didn't look in her direction. The tension was gone, replaced by something colder, absence. Like she wasn't even there. But the students noticed. They asked questions. Where'd you learn to play like that? Can you teach me? Are you in anything after school? Even Darnell's favorites were drifting. They still followed lessons, but their eyes weren't on him anymore. That Thursday, something unexpected happened. At her locker, Ms. Bright approached. You free after school? Amara nodded. There's someone I want you to meet. Later, in a quiet corner of the music wing, Ms. Bright introduced her to Thelma Rowe, director of the Bakersfield Youth Ensemble. She was graceful and composed, with eyes that missed nothing. I've heard about you, Rose said. The way people talk, you'd think you walked into the room with fire in your hands. Amara smiled, a little. We've got a spot in our spring showcase. You be the youngest soloist in 5 years. I want you on that stage. Amara hesitated. What if my school finds out? They probably will, Rose said. But there's nothing they can do to stop you. That night, Amara practiced harder than she had in weeks. Her grandmother's old bow felt firm and steady, like it knew the way forward better than she did. But Southridge wasn't finished with her. And neither was Mr. Darnell. By the second week of March, the school felt split, not openly, but in subtle glances and hallway murmurs. Some students looked at Amara with respect, a few with jealousy. Teacher's pet. She thinks she's better than everyone. She made him look bad on purpose. The teachers were divided too. Some smiled when they passed her. Others avoided eye contact altogether. Then, on Monday, Principal Lindley made an announcement over the intercom, measured, calm. This Friday, we'll be hosting a student forum after school in the library to discuss equity and respectful learning environments. All students and staff are welcome to attend. No names were mentioned, but everyone knew who and what it was about. Mr. Darnell didn't show up to class that day. A confused substitute said he'd taken a few days of personal leave. Students exchanged looks, but didn't comment. Amara didn't react. She just tuned her violin. The forum arrived quickly. At first, Amara wasn't going to go. She hated being the center of attention. But Ms. Bright caught her in the hallway. You should come. You don't have to speak. Just listen. You deserve to hear what people are saying. So she went. The library was packed. Students, teachers, even a few parents. A small panel sat at the front. Principal Lindley, Ms. Bright, 2 student leaders. A microphone passed from hand to hand. Mateo spoke first. Some teachers think silence means respect. But sometimes we're quiet because we don't feel safe to speak. Then Brianna stood up. We watched something unfair happen in class. We all saw it. Most of us said nothing. That's on us too. Amara listened. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. Amara sat with her hands folded in her lap, her fingers twitching softly, as if quietly tracing unseen scales. The room was still, until finally, someone broke the silence. Can the student this is about say something? Every head turned. Amara rose slowly. She didn't reach for the microphone. She didn't need it. I didn't come here to be a spectacle, she said, voice steady. I came to learn, just like everyone else. I never asked to be singled out. I just did what was asked of me. I played. The library fell silent, deeper than before. When someone tells you, directly or indirectly, that your voice doesn't belong, that your talent isn't welcome, it stays with you. Even if you know your worth. Even if you've worked your whole life to prove it. A parent raised their hand gently. Are you saying the teacher was biased? Amara paused. Her gaze swept the room. I'm saying he made a decision, and he made it in front of all of you. What you do with that is up to you. Miss Bright's eyes didn't leave Amara. She looked like she was seeing something larger than one student, something that had been quietly growing for years. After the forum, students approached Amara one by one. Some thanked her. Some whispered their own stories, moments in other classrooms, with other teachers, things they had never felt brave enough to say aloud until now. The next morning, she found a note in her locker. No name, just a line typed neatly on paper. You reminded us what truth sounds like when it isn't afraid. That evening, Miss Rose sent confirmation. Amara's solo in the spring showcase was official, April 22nd, downtown. At the same time, Southridge initiated what they called a staff reflection period. No one used the word investigation, but everyone knew what it really was. Teachers were asked to review their practices. Some took it seriously. Others didn't. Mr. Darnell returned a week later. He was quieter, stiffer. He no longer gave her so much as a glance. Amara didn't mind. She no longer played for his approval. She played for the boy in the third row who had started taking his violin home again. For the teacher who had finally opened her eyes to what she had overlooked. For the girl who used to hide her sheet music because she thought nobody cared. But Amara's real performance was still ahead. The Bakersfield Civic Center wasn't extravagant, but under the stage lights and quiet murmurs of the audience, it felt vast, like the center of the world. Families filed in with casual weekend clothes, some holding flowers, others simply buzzing with excitement. The youth ensemble's spring concert was a yearly tradition, but this year there was a different kind of energy in the room. The program had circulated online. One name stood out. Amara Jennings, soloist, age 14. Backstage, she waited with her heels tapping softly against the floor. Her violin case lay open beside her. Inside, her grandmother's bow gleamed, freshly cleaned, polished, ready. Miss Rowe appeared at her side. Ready? Amara looked up. I think so. You don't have to prove anything. Not to them. Not to me. Just to yourself. Amara gave a small nod. When her name was called, the room didn't erupt into applause. Instead, a hush fell, a stillness that spoke of curiosity, maybe even reverence. She stepped out calmly, her back straight, movements fluid. She didn't introduce herself. She didn't posture. She lifted her violin, adjusted her stance, and began. No theatrics. No flourish. Just music. Her sound was clear, poised, emotionally rich, but never chaotic. Every note was purposeful, like she was stitching together her own truth one measure at a time. The room leaned in, as if afraid to miss even one beat. When the final note faded, there was a full heartbeat of silence. No one moved, no one clapped. Then, like a wave building, hands came together. Applause burst forth strong, rising. Some stood. Some wiped away tears. Miss Bright rose from her seat in the third row. Brianna followed. Backstage, Amara finally sat down. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from release. It was done. The next morning, a local arts blogger wrote a short review. A young artist with depth well beyond her years, poised, grounded, unforgettable. A community paper picked it up. Then a regional newsletter. Nothing viral, but enough. Enough for people to notice. Enough to ripple back to Southridge. Mr. Darnell stayed in his corner. Rumor had it he'd been asked to relinquish a department leadership position. No official statement. No apology. Just quiet consequences. He still taught, but the fire in his tone was gone. So was the smugness. Some students noticed. Others didn't care. Amara noticed and said nothing. 2 weeks later, she was invited to perform at a youth panel focused on representation in the arts. Afterward, a young girl, maybe 12, approached her, holding her mother's hand tightly. You look like me, the girl said, wide-eyed. I thought only famous people could play like that. Amara knelt to meet her gaze. You don't need fame, she said. Just patience. And a little fire. That night, Amara sat on the apartment balcony beside her mother, the city blinking below them like quiet stars. Her violin lay untouched beside her. You didn't let it change you, her mother said gently. Amara stared out at the night. It changed how I see things. But I'm still me. Her mother smiled. Your grandmother would have cried her eyes out. They both laughed, soft, warm. And for once, Amara allowed herself to feel proud. Not because she was better than anyone else, but because she had stood tall. Because she had made her music louder than their doubt. Louder than the teacher who tried to silence her. Louder than every sideways glance, every whispered judgment. She didn't fight with accusations or anger. She fought with her gift. And it was enough. If someone tries to shrink you, tries to fit you into a box, remember, you are not made of cardboard. You're made of everything they never bothered to understand. Let your voice be the thing they remember, long after they stop listening.